that reflect the aspirations of the people of Ghana. A bottom-up approach, they call it. Our political desk team, headed by Evans Mensah, has counted 617 promises. Very loaded manifesto. Is it a solutions manifesto or a desperate sugar-coated manifesto just to entice you for your vote? The NDC is promising to pay assembly members, a promise that could be traced in the 2012, 2016, and now the 2020 manifesto. The big question is, why hasn't this promise been fulfilled? What shows that this promise will be fulfilled this time round? Primary or free primary health care, $10 billion for infrastructure. They've tagged it the big push. Then the legalization of the Okada. That's a popular one. We'll be touching base with a number of groups who will be sharing their informed opinions on the NDC's manifesto, the People's Manifesto. Now, this is a Joy News channel. It's platforms on DSTV channel 421 and GoTV channel 144. We are live as well. And if you must leave the television set at any point in time, you can catch the program live on myjoyonline.com, our social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We have it all covered. And then at the top of the hour 8, our Joy FM listeners will join us on 99.7 FM together with affiliates across the country. At this point, we'll take a look at the COVID-19 updates as a nation. So that's where we stand when it comes to COVID-19. Our new cases, 46. Our active cases are at 806. Our recoveries and discharges 44,342. Our death toll is 286. Our confirmed cases are at 45,434. That's our national figure, 45,434. So with that out of the way, that's our COVID-19 update as a nation, just 46 new cases. But you need to continue to adhere to the safety protocols. COVID-19 is real. After this short break, I'll introduce to you my guest, Sami Jemfi, lawyer Sami Jemfi, is a communications officer of the NDC. Much later also, Kojo Pokua, an energy analyst, will also be joining us with their thought. Gabriel Benaku is with a coalition of NGOs in health. He will pick their thoughts as well. And then, of course, the president of NAGRAT, Angel Eric Kabonu, will also be joining us. Edem Senano is looking at the corruption, anti-corruption fight of the NDC, citizens movement against corruption. And, of course, our very own head of our Joy News, our Greek and Science and Technology desk, Joseph Opoku Gakbo, will also join us. Your questions are also welcome at this point. I am MFA Pau. Thanks for your company. Welcome once again.
In life, you sometimes seem to be cruising along. But just when you least expect it, things could go horribly wrong.
Leave nothing to chance. Let Geico Group help you achieve your goals with customized solutions for life and general insurance, healthcare and finance. Geico, we cushion you for life.
Joy News, your most credible news source, is available on digital TV, multi-TV, DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144, and also streaming on myjoyonline.com.
Season, an avalanche of promises.
When we come into office, we will legalize Okada, but we will regulate it.
We are building a new harbor in Cape Coast, and a new airport in Cape Coast.
But how do you know who or what to trust in your quest to make an informed decision on Election Day? The Manifesto Tracker will break down the promises, interrogate cost, feasibility, and how they reflect the actual needs of people so you can make your informed decision. The Manifesto Tracker on PM Express every Wednesday at 9 p.m. and on the Super Morning Show every Thursday. It's in partnership with Imani Africa.
Only on Joy 99.7 FM and on the Joy News channel on Malta TV.
They are Joy News' longest serving storytellers. Seen it all in the platform's 25-year journey.
That's one of the most intense environments you can ever be in.
40 years, wow, what a transformation.
So what are their stories?
When I was in Cape Coast UCC, 6 a.m., midday news, 6 p.m., all your lecturers are listening, all your friends are listening, then your name is mentioned, said, come and watch. It was a big deal, no?
I was a bit apprehensive because, I'd heard of all these, big names, Komla Dumo and, Matilda Asante, and I was apprehensive. I didn't know whether I would fit in there.
I knew I was going to be a journalist when I was in JSS 1.
I don't think a lot of organizations can boast of being around for 25 years and thriving.
There are many things in society that wouldn't have been without Joy FM.
In the news, on TV, radio, and online.
This is the lockdown on the Joy News channel. Thanks so much for your company. And it promises to be an exciting one tonight, looking at the lineup we have. And in the studio with me is Mr. Sambi Jemfi, the communications officer of the NDC. Thank you so much for your company here on the lockdown. We're locking you down tonight. And are you ready? You're ready to be locked down? Okay. So we'll bring in the other analysts as we go on. I've introduced them to you. We'll have Kojo Poku, who is an energy analyst. We'll have Gabriel Benaku, who is with the NGOs in Health, Coalition of NGOs in Health. We'll have my own colleague, Joseph Opoku Gakpo. He's the head of our Joy News Greek Science and Tech Desk. We'll also have Angel Kabonu, who is the president of NAGRAT. We'll get their thoughts shortly, and then we'll have them leave us via Zoom. But I'll start with you, Mr. Sambi Jemfi. Well, our head of desk, political desk, and the team, they've been counting up to what, 617 promises. Have you been counting? How many promises are there in the People's Manifesto?
I have not counted the number of promises, but I think that it is a commendable and a productive exercise for the media to help track the promises that political parties make. I think that it helps to deepen the culture of transparency and accountability that we are all trying to promote in our democratic experiment. But one thing is for sure, President Mahama is honest, he's trustworthy, and when given the opportunity on the 7th of December 2020, with the help of God and the people of this country, he will implement all the transformational policies and programs that we have captured in the People's Manifesto. The reason why we have that confidence that these promises are realizable and will be achieved under the next NDC Mahama government with the help of God is that these are realistic and doable policies and programs which emanated from the people of this country. And that is what makes this manifesto unique and one of a kind, because it is the first manifesto ever to be produced by a political party in this country through the kind of open, broad, bottom-up consultative process that the writing of the People's Manifesto went through all these months. And so it reflects the needs and aspirations of Ghanaians of all walks of life. And that is why, since it was launched last Monday, it has received acclaim and warm reception nationwide.
That's the kind of feedback you're receiving.
Exactly. Because
but
it
it's interesting
resonates
that you
with
have
the people of this country,
it's 600
and it addresses their needs and
I'll come to
aspirations.
the feedback. Of course, we'll have a lot of time because of the questions that are coming in. It's all on the manifesto, so you get a lot of time to talk about it. But knowing that you have criticized your opponents, for instance, for the number of promises that they put out there, you're still criticizing because you say they are not achievable, they are not realistic. Most of them you say they have not achieved. And then you are putting out 617 promises, and you think that you're not just throwing them out there for people to just vote for the NDC, or because the people said you should put it there, so you have put it there.
I don't think that we have criticized the MPP for the number of promises they made. It's not an issue of numbers. It's an issue of whether or not they have lived up to their promises, whether or not they have fulfilled their promises.
Did you follow that press conference held by Mr. Samuel Kujeto, for instance?
It was organized.
It was voluminous and all.
No, it was organized under the auspices of the National Communications Bureau.
Of course.
At our third weekly press briefing.
So you know that very well.
I'm very much conversant with that. And we described manifestos since 1992 by the two major parties, the MPP and the NDC. But the main crux, or gravamen of that exercise was to assess whether or not this government has been able to fulfill the numerous lofty promises they made to the people of this country on the basis of which they were elected. And as we demonstrated with indisputable fact that day, over 86% of the 631 promises they made in their 2016 manifesto still remain unfulfilled. And they include promises like one district, one hospital, one district, one market, one region, one theater, one village, one dam, one district, one factory, $1 million per constituency. We will transform Nima into Villaggio. Accra will be the cleanest city in Africa, and so on. You
have a promise to transform Nima market as well, also in this manifesto. But
exactly.
It's interesting that you know the number of promises that your opponents put out there, 631, yet you do not know how many promises you have put out in the People's Manifesto.
Like I said, I've not counted the promises one by one yet. The manifesto is just 1 week old. But we will, like I said, we commend you for engaging in that exercise. It is productive. It will help deepen transparency and accountability, because when elected, we would like the people and the media, who are the fourth estate of the realm, to hold us accountable, for the promises we made.
Okay.
And so we will also do our own count, and I'll speak to the chairperson of the manifesto committee and those who worked on it, and see whether we can corroborate the
number that we have put out.
The number that you have put out.
So maybe it could be more, but at least we've counted 617.
We will check on that. But MFR, the most important thing, like I said, is whether or not President Mahama and the NDC can be trusted to deliver.
Okay.
You see, there is one thing you cannot take away from His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. He exudes trust and honesty seamlessly, because that is who he is. When he promises, he delivers. And so these promises which emanated, or let me say policies and programs which emanated from the people themselves, we are optimistic and confident that with the help of God and with the help of the people, we are going to implement that to achieve the socio-economic transformation that we are all yearning for. And if we go into the details, I'm going to explain to you how we intend to achieve these policies and programs.
So the main concern, at least for some of us, is the fact that the promises that you've made, and then the 25 freebies and all, the former president had mentioned himself that they will be taking over an economy that will be in tatters, at least listening to him on Monday. So he may be trustworthy and all, but how is he hoping? It looks like this manifesto was put together without the post-COVID or the pandemic that we are currently in mind. It looks like that did not happen. How are we hoping to fund all this?
No, on the contrary, this manifesto was put together with COVID-19. Even before we begin to talk about fixing the economy, we talk about the COVID-19 situation in this country. and how we would have dealt with it differently, and how we seek to deal with it differently when given the opportunity. So we are not oblivious of the challenges that the nation currently finds itself in as a result of the COVID-19 situation we have on our hands. But you see, the NDC, if you look at our tradition, we have that reputation of turning around difficult situations, you know, and solving difficult problems.
Is it a magic one because of the reality? The reality.
We have had ingenuity and creativity. I'll give you a typical example. Look at Dumso. This is a problem that transcends governments. It has confronted government since the 1980s.
You were worst hit.
We were worst hit by that, but we tackled it head on, ensure that we ramped up generational capacity, energy power generational capacity from about 1,800 megawatts to over 5,000 megawatts. Such that today we have energy, you know, excess power.
The excess is piling up our energy sector debts.
What the government is telling you is not wholly true, and we can have that discussion on another day, but it's not true at all. So we ensured that we had excess power, we had more than enough. We dealt with the legacy, you know, debts which were crippling the energy sector through the introduction of ESLA, which was another product of our ingenuity and creativity. We strengthened state-owned enterprises in the power sector. When we were in office, for example, ECG was making profits and so on and so forth. So we dealt with that problem. Even the issue of fuel was addressed by us, through the Tuabo, you know, the Ghana Gas Company investment of over $1 billion, which has ensured that today we process gas in this country and save this country over 300 million Ghana cedis. So all these initiatives we took created a situation where at the time we were exiting office in January 2017, we had dealt with that long-standing problem of doomsday, or if you like, power deficit. I can say the same thing about the economy we met in the 1980s, specifically the 1981, when the PNDC took over the realms of this administration. That was a time that inflation was hovering around 120. Growth was in the negatives and all that. We found ourselves in a difficult situation. And yet through the innovative economic policies that we embarked on under the leadership of Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings at the time, we transformed this country and did a lot for this country. So we've done it before and we can do it again. And that is why, for example, if you look at this manifesto, we are proposing policies to mitigate the socioeconomic effect of COVID-19 on the people. That is what has led, for example, to the Chimpe promise, which is a promise to absorb 50% of the school fees of all students in our public tertiary institutions, made up of universities, colleges of education, nursing training institutions, students in our technical universities and all that, because we understand and appreciate the fact that COVID-19 has had a debilitating effect on livelihoods and the businesses
and on our economy as well. So where is that money coming from?
We have explained clearly how we intend to fund these policies. But if you will allow me just run you through a few highlights of the manifesto, then we can
I'm sure that
deal with the issue holistically. The issue of funding,
I see the number of questions on that, so it will come up. Yeah. But let's not keep our guests who are also joining us waiting for too long. You will have all the time, you know that, right? Okay. So let's just bring them in. They will give us just their thoughts on what they've read so far regarding the key sectors. So I see that we have Mr. Kabonu also joining us, Edem Senanu will also join us, and then we'll have also my colleague Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, and then of course Gabriel Benaku also joining us. But let's go Vazu now. Mr. Kabonu, we'll start with you because there are a number of key issues when it comes to education as well. I see teacher motivation on page 69, for instance. You were getting some tablets and laptops and all. We'll get into it. But let's hear your thoughts, what you've seen when it comes to education. I had the opportunity to speak to you on the NPP's manifesto. You've looked at this one also. What are your initial thoughts?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now, Mr.?
Hello?
Okay, so I'll come back. I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you, Mr. Kabonu. It appears we have a technical challenge there. We'll get back to Mr. Kabonu and my other guests via Zoom to pick their initial thoughts on this, and then we can let them go, and then we'll get into the first batch of questions at this point. So if you may, I will just allow you a few minutes so that you can wrap up your initial comments, then we can get into the questions.
Just a few highlights. President Mahama has indicated that the main plank of his second coming is jobs, jobs, jobs. Mm-hmm. And that is why the theme of the People's Manifesto is jobs and prosperity for all. And so if you look at the manifesto, we have this policy that we have christened Ejumapa. Mm-hmm. What Ejumapa simply means is that under the next NDC Mahama government, we will create a minimum of 1 million sustainable permanent jobs with decent wages. So we are talking about permanent jobs and not ad hoc jobs. And we are talking about jobs which come with decent wages.
What kinds of permanent jobs are we talking about?
We are talking about private sector jobs, public sector jobs, and jobs.
So you're doing this. You're doing this in partnership with the private sector.
So there are private sector jobs. For example, if you look at the big push policy, which is a $10 billion investment in infrastructure, we are projecting, based on the analysis we have done, that every year we will create a minimum of 90,000 jobs within that broad spectrum. And these jobs will go to indigents, local people, because as you may be aware, only local contractors, architects, artisans, and materials will be used under the big push, policy as an incentive to strengthen indigenous businesses in this country, to promote indigenous businesses. Under agriculture and agribusinesses, we are projecting to create over 35,000 jobs in 2021 alone. Light manufacturing, that is apparels, accessories, good processing, 30,000 jobs. In the pharmaceuticals industry, 21,000 jobs. Tree crops, that is shea, cashew, cocoa, palm, and rubber, 11,000 jobs. Furniture and furnishings, 10,400. Waste management and sanitation, 10,000. The tourism sector, 9,000. Financial services, 8,000, and all that. We have total that I can share this document with you.
And these are your projections.
In the private sector alone, in the private sector alone, we are projecting to create a minimum of 255,000 within our first year. And so we are not just putting out figures. It is not just about cheap sloganeering, as some do. We have done the analysis and we know where the jobs will come from and how to create the jobs. In the public sector, we have done what is called HR gap analysis to identify vacancies in the public sector that we need to fill in conformity with international standards.
Where are these vacancies?
So, for example, in the Ghana Police Service, we have identified 35,020 vacancies.
The same police service that you're complaining that they were being packed with foot soldiers, for instance.
We've never said that the police has employed people to its optimum capacity. If you look at this news article here from Ghana Business News, it says Ghana Police Service seriously understaffed, Minister, and this story is dated August 2020. So there is a huge gap in there. You know why? Because per the UN internationally acceptable standards, we are supposed to have a ratio of 1 policeman is to 500 citizens. Currently, our ratio stands around 1 policeman is to 808 citizens. And so there is a gap to be filled, and we intend to do that. In the Ghana Education Service, for example, if you check the MIS data, we have a gap of over 98,650. Here we are talking about staff, teachers, and they are committed to fill. In the Ghana Health Service, we have identified over 76,785 gaps. Same for the Ghana Fire Service, 30,186. Ghana Immigration Service, 3,522. Ghana Prison Service, 7,125, and so on. In total, if you put regional IT hubs, NCC, the local government service, everything together, we have identified through this HR gap analysis that His Excellency President Mahama commissioned us to do vacancies for over 367,000 public sector, and we are committed to filling these gaps as we grow the economy.
Plans for NAPCO?
NAPCO, we have indicated that we are going to bring permanence to NAPCO. You know, when they were engaged for a period of 3 years, and that 3 years is supposed to lapse this year. Government, seeing elections approaching and looking for votes, has decided to extend their contract for another 6 months. What His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is saying is that he doesn't believe in ad hoc jobs. He appreciates the fact that unemployment is a big problem. As a matter of fact, a security threat to this nation. And so what he will do is that he will make all NAPCO beneficiaries permanent. Those who require further training will be trained and progressively integrated into the public sector through this HR gap analysis that I've explained. But more finally on jobs, we've also spoken about skill development, which has to do with a national apprenticeship program, under which any Ghanaian young or old, literate or illiterate, desirous of learning a craft, will be enrolled onto that program for free.
For free.
Trained. And during the training, government will ensure that every month we support them with stipends, for their feeding, their transportation, so that they can really learn. And when they pass out, we are going to give them certificates and set them up with the necessary toolkits so that they can open their businesses and employ others. These are but a few of the measures that we have aligned in the People's Manifesto to address the problem of high unemployment confronting this nation, which, in our opinion, is a time bomb that we are sitting on, and that is why President Mahama is so passionate about that.
Okay, so but a quick correction, though. You earlier mentioned that one police officer, according to the UN recommendations, is to one police officer to 500 is actually 450. I'm just checking.
So we'll that situation is even worse.
Okay, so we'll continue
we currently stand at one policeman is to about 800.
Okay, so that's just a quick correction. Let's go via Zoom now. At this point, I'm sure that Mr. Angel Kabonu, Edem Senanu, and then Dr. Gabriel Benaku, and then of course Joseph Wokogepo can hear us now. At this point, let's look at some of the key sectors, then we can get into the number of questions that we've received. Mr. Kabonu, I'll start with you because education is key at this point. So I was asking earlier what your initial thoughts are on what you've seen and heard from the NDC in terms of this People Manifesto that they've put out.
Well, I'd like to make some preliminary statements that maybe every Ghanaian should consider making analysis of the various manifestos. One thing that I'd like to talk about is we should be very watchful of the level of revenue mobilization that we are able to harness internally within this country and see whether there is a direct relationship between the revenue mobilization that we do in this country and the promises that is being made by the various political parties. For example, as we speak, public sector consumes. Can you hear me, MFA?
I can hear you loud and clear, Mr. Kabonu.
Okay, so as we speak, the public sector wages, salaries, and compensation consume a huge chunk of internally generated revenue. Ghana is making about 30% revenue mobilization annually. So if all promises are made in various manifestos, there is a need for us to ask the various political parties what strategy they have to be able to mobilize revenue internally to be able to support the promises that they are making in their various manifestos. So that is a general statement that I would like to make before I come to the specific issues of education. Now, when you look at education, when the New Patriotic Party was in a position and promised free senior high school, the teacher took a different position. Whereas we welcome the idea, the philosophy of giving education to people because they cannot afford it. We knew historically the difficulties and challenges that governments have had in ensuring that adequate revenues go to the schools and go to the schools continuously. So we opted for the idea that it would be more prudent if the government will embark on a free senior high school that will target needy parents, those who are talented, and allow those who are blessed with the resources to be able to pay. So this will free up resources so the government can really put those resources to different parts of education. Unfortunately, the position of Congress did not hold true. We are all seeing the challenges that we are seeing. Now then, NDC is promised that they are going to really expand the frontiers to cover
private in the private areas.
In the private areas. Right. What it also means is that more resources are supposed to be mobilized to those institutions also. The question we want to ask ourselves, have we been satisfied the needs and wants of the public schools, let alone extending some of these resources to the private schools in deprived areas. So that is something that we are a little bit apprehensive about, and we want a little bit detailed explanation to understand the workability and the sustainability of that promise made by the NDC. Again, we also want clarity to do with the payment of school fees of the tertiary institutions. Are they 50%. Going to pay 50% pro rata, or the 50% is for only 1 year, or the 50% is to a stated amount of money? We want clarity in that area also. Okay. I'll pause for now to get these answers.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Angel Kabonu. I would want to go to Mr. Kojo Poku as well. Let's box energy and then education together. Then we can get answers to it. The number of questions about VSHS, and then the 50% that you're hoping to pay for tertiary students. Mr. Kojo Poku, if you're ready, I don't know if we have Mr. Kojo Poku also on standby.
Yes,
okay, so Mr. Kojo Poku, I've been looking at energy as well. You don't have too much to look at, just about 2 pages or so. But what stands out for you looking at the People's Manifesto and energy is on page 40, and then also
for me, unfortunately, not much stands out. I have gone through that manifesto, and I think there's a very big missed opportunity in that manifesto. If we all remember correctly, there is this PDS saga, which is what some of us call private sector participation in the electricity generation. Yeah. It is something that was started by the NDC, and the MPP came to continue it, and we all know how it all ended. Some of us were very eager to see that if the NDC would include the private sector participation in their manifesto, and it looked like they did not. And most of the challenges in this country, Mr. Sami Gyamfi talked about doom saw in their era. Most of the challenges in the country today, if that private sector participation is not brought back, we are going to end up back in that doom saw again, because we need sanitation in the generation, in the distribution, because there are a lot of discussion, a lot of proposals, and a lot on the table to be done. But it looks like the NDC did not put private sector participation in their manifesto. So it goes to tell me that if that is to go by, they don't believe in the private sector participation, which they did not put. Now, secondly, I can see the good thing they are trying to do, which is in Europe, residential pay more, and industry pay less. So if you read the manifesto, they tell you that they are trying to allocate the cheaper generation, which is the hydro, Akosombo, to industry. So if they do that, what that means is that they are going to give the cheaper fuel to industry, so industry will pay less. What that means is that households will have to pay more. Now, they talk a lot of increasing renewable, increasing mini hydros. All those are new capital injection, new infrastructure, which will bring on board a lot of capital expenditure. What that means is that it will make the generation basket a lot more expensive. Now, what is missing is nothing is said about increasing of electricity. If you take the cheaper generation and give it to industry, what it fundamentally means is that residentials have to pay more for electricity. Well, Mr. Sami Gyamfi admits that they will have to increase electricity to be able to achieve what they are trying to do. Now, maybe the debt of this country doesn't mean anything anymore. If that's the case, and everybody thinks that we are going to borrow to the hill and finance anything we want to help with the future of this country, then yes, we can all go to bed and say that yes, everybody can do whatever they think they want to do. But if we want to now do things within prudence, if we want to do things within what this country can afford, then clearly we need to be able to say things within our confines, with the confines being matching our revenue to our expenditure. So if they want to now be able to do some of the things they want to do, one of the things they would do is to have to increase electricity. Now, if they tell us that they are going to increase electricity, but be able to achieve all the things they want to achieve, someone like me, I'll support that, because I think we need to have prudent approaches. There's no point promising me the world when you can't afford it. So if you tell me you're going to give me good, efficient electricity, you're going to expand renewables, you're going to give cheaper fuel to industries, but Ghanaians will have to pay more. Be honest with us. We will accept it and we will support you. I think I will leave that and let him answer the question on if they can achieve this. If they are going to borrow to support that, then that's fine. I mean, and nobody will have an argument with, look, we are going to borrow 20, 30 billion and we don't care what happens in the future, then that's fine. There's no argument. But if they think they need to have a sustainable industry where they match revenue to expenditure, then they will have to increase electricity.
Mr. Kojopoku, we're grateful. We'll leave it here. Mr. Sami Jenfi will take these two questions for now. I'm sure Mr. Gabriel Benako and the rest are also itching to ask you their questions. But let's deal with the first two that have come in. Issues about education. So Nagrat is asking about the workability and sustainability. You're hoping to expand the free SHS to cover the private sector deprived, those in the deprived and underserved areas. The workability and sustainability are issues for him. And then also the 50% that you're going to pay for tertiary. Is it a pro rata? Is it a 1 year or is it on a stated amount? What exactly is it?
Okay, so let me start with the Chimpe promise. That is how we've christened it.
Okay.
The promise to absorb 50% of the fees of all students in our public tertiary institutions. We didn't just make that promise for votes. We've done the analysis. We know how much it's going to cost and we know how we are going to fund it.
How much is it costing?
The promise actually, first of all, let me explain what a promise is to absorb the 50% of the school fees of students in public tertiary institutions for the 2020-2021 academic year.
So it's just for 1 year? Is it just for 1 year?
For 1 year.
Okay.
For 1
year. So that question is answered.
Pushing the students against the high cost of tertiary education and make tertiary education affordable. And here I'm talking about reforms relative to the student loan trust fund. That is why, for example, we have said that under the next NDC Mahama government, any student who gets admission can use his admission letter to guarantee for a student loan COVID alleviation program to mitigate the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19
on the tertiary students.
On tertiary students, because affordability at the secondary level, at least for public institutions, is not a problem. I'll address the issue of the private institutions. So for the tertiary institution, for the first year, that's what we are doing for you. Okay, but beyond that, we are still mindful of affordability. That is why if you look at the educational section,
so it's not on a stated
we are
amount.
talking about
the entire
accessible, quality, and affordable education for all Ghanaian children. And so the new reforms that we are introducing to the student loan trust fund will also ensure that even after the first year, after this 50% reduction in school fees for students in public tertiary institutions for 2020-2021 academic year, students can access higher student loans under better conditions where you will not be the requirement of a guarantor will no longer be a requirement, and where you'll be required to pay not when you leave school but when you get a job. Okay. You see, I need to deal with the issue, the funding, the sources of the funding holistically, but I just needed to explain that promise. So it is for 1 year, 2020-2021 academic year, and it's for all students in all public tertiary institutions. And we know the numbers. I will deal with the issue.
So we have a number of questions, so we need to speed up with the answering so we can get more questions.
Then on free SHS, we have
workability, sustainability.
We have a self-inflicted problem, and I'm most grateful to Mr. Kabono, you know, when he made a point that if government had listened to some of the suggestions they made at the time free SHS was being implemented by the Akufo-Addo government, we would have avoided challenges like double track and other challenges bedeviling up.
But he also has concerns with the new promise you are putting out.
The difference between us and the MPP is
have you listened to them?
We listen. That is why we met group teacher groups and all that during the drafting of the People's Manifesto.
And they proposed this?
Of course, it was part of that. What we are saying is that we have a self-inflicted problem of double track that we need to resolve. That double track problem is as a result of an infrastructural deficit at the secondary school level that we need to deal with. There are over 430 private secondary schools in this country which have been left to rot. Some of them are operating far below half capacity as we speak. Most of them are collapsing, they are laying off workers and all that. And yet, what led to the double track problem was an infrastructural deficit for just about 181,000 students for the 2018-2019 academic year. What we are saying is that we will harness these facilities by including this private school in the scope of the free SHS program. That at least gives you 150,000 spaces, you understand? Apart from that, we will embark on an emergency infrastructure drive by completing all abandoned e-blocks. Because if this Akufo-Addo government had completed the over 80 e-blocks, you know, we completed and handed over about 46 to them. There were about 80 at different levels of completion. If they had completed these schools, double track would not have arisen.
Okay.
And so we are going to complete these schools and expand infrastructure in existing secondary schools. So it is a three-pronged approach. And this is something we have done before. You know that we abolished the shift system at the basic level. We also, when we're confronted with the problem of, you know, when President Kufuor increased the duration of secondary education from 3 years to 4 years, we came into office in 2009. The third-year students were about to graduate to fourth year. There was no school blocks which had been provided to absorb them. We are just 1 year. We did the same thing we are promising to do now, and backed on an emergency infrastructure drive, expanded facilities in existing schools, and avoided a double track situation. That is exactly what we will do relative to the challenges bedeviling the free SHS program, because we intend to continue and sustain it. Not just that, we also intend to make TVET both at the secondary level and at the tertiary level free. And by that, what we mean is that currently just about 50 secondary TVET institutions are covered under free SHS. Those MBTI, those under the Ministry of Labor are not covered. Those in our technical universities are not covered. We are going to ensure that any Ghanaian pursuing a technical and vocational course at the secondary level and at the tertiary level, here we are talking about technical universities, formerly polytechnics, will go to school for free. Because that is part of the development of our human resource base to deal with the big problem of unemployment. Okay, so you've attempted answering the questions of Nagrat. I'm sure that. And I really appreciate Mr. Kabono for these questions. For these questions. Okay, so let's go on to Mr. Kujoko's questions. You have to be really fast on some of these answers so we can take more. First of all, let me make the point that he's right that we did not capture PDS and the private sector participation concessionaire arrangement for ECG in the manifesto. That is because that if you are drafting a manifesto and you want to capture everything in there, the world will not be in that. This is something you've held a number of press conferences on. President Mahama has already spoken about PDS and what he intends to do about the ECG concessionaire arrangement. He has said, for example, that we are going to ensure that we investigate that stinking scandal, make sure that those who have misappropriated funds account for same. And he has also indicated that the NDC is committed to the PSP concessionaire arrangement for ECG. We started it. Everything was going on smoothly before President Akufo-Addo came in, changed the percentage arrangement, decided to give 51% to his friends and cronies, some of whom were owners of barbering shops. At the end of the day, we found out that the insurance guarantee on the basis of which we gave them that important national asset was even fraudulent. They've collected monies from us in the form of electricity tariffs that they are yet to account for. We are going to investigate that, and we are going to ensure that we pursue that point has been made. But secondly, issues about finally increasing electricity. I mean, there is no indication in this manifesto that we'll be increasing electricity. What we have said here, and I'll just read it because it is self-explanatory, and that is that we will prioritize cheaper hydropower for heavy industries to create jobs and vulnerable homes. That is social safety nets, and use the rest to further lower average thermal tariffs. So this policy is rather about reducing the cost of tariffs, not just for businesses, like he accurately said, but also for vulnerable homes and for lower people within the lower average, income bracket. We have also said here that we will provide tax and other incentives to encourage thermal generators to lower tariffs. So we are looking at lowering tariffs. The first part, for instance, steadily expand mini hydro, thermal, and renewable power generation to match growth in demand, especially for heavy industries such as aluminium, iron, and steel smelting, and for export. There, his concern is it means that we are going to be paying more. No, you are not going to be paying more because we have another section on reliability and affordability of power. We have a program for affordability of power. And that program is simple. We have thermal generators of power. The cost of thermal energy is expensive. If you want to make it cheaper, it means that you must be ready to give them incentives to bring down their cost of operation. And that is why we have indicated a clear commitment to give them incentives that will bring down the cost of their tariffs. We have also spoken about, prioritizing cheaper sources of power, like hydro, so that industries will be fed with power from those hydro plants, okay? And also, Ghanaians, vulnerable homes, those within the lower average thermal, income brackets, lower income brackets, will also be given power from this. And so what we are proposing is a mix of power from hydro and thermal. This in a way that reduces the cost of power for businesses and industry, and at the same time reduces the cost of power for the ordinary Ghanaian. And we have clearly explained that here.
Okay. Mr. Kojopoku, this is a technical area, so I'll need you back on that. You're satisfied with the responses that you've gotten from Mr. Samijevi to the questions that she posed? Quickly.
Well, no, he did not answer my question. And like I clearly stated, if he is going to give incentive to the thermal generators to use electricity, it means government is going to get less revenue. It boils down to what comes into government coffers. As we stand now, we all know the problem within the sector. There's huge indebtedness. GEMCOs are owed a lot of money. They are coming in, they are saying that they're going to create reliable power. It means you have to pay what is owed. If you now are saying that you're going to give tax incentive, it means you're going to get less money coming into the government coffers. My point is that all the things that NDC is saying is money going out. How are you going to balance that with money coming in? Where are you going to get the money coming in?
Okay. Mr. Kojopoku, thank you so much. So, money going out, how are you dealing with money coming in?
You see, that is for the want of a better word, a short-sighted way of looking at revenue mobilization.
Is it?
When you provide tax incentives to power generators or businesses, like I'm going to explain the tax card that we are providing, small-scale enterprises, medium-scale enterprises, and all that. Immediately, in the interim, you are going to see a decline in revenue. But as these businesses expand, as they increase their economic activity, as they employ more people, you increase your tax base. You are able to tax more and maximize revenue mobilization. Because there is an agenda. Taxes. What we are trying to do is that we are trying to reduce the cost of business, the cost of doing business, the cost of operation, so that businesses can produce at a cheaper rate, they can employ more. As they employ more, as they produce more, you can rake in more revenue from that by employing advanced technological means, expanding the tax, ensuring strict compliance to tax measures and all that. You don't necessarily increase tax. People paying taxes all the time as a means of generating revenue. That is what we have done since 1992, and it hasn't worked. And what we need to do now, and that is why, for example, under the next government, small-scale businesses entered entirely. We have also said that medium-scale enterprises will also be given a reduction from 25% to 15%, and newly incorporated medium-scale enterprises employing 20 people and above will not pay corporate income taxes for their first 2 years. Yes, we are going to lose revenue as a result of that in the interim, if you look at it that way. But over a period of time, these businesses will be able to plow back those taxes into their businesses, expand, employ more people, pay more income taxes. Their employees will pay more income taxes. And so these are the innovative ways of enhancing revenue mobilization without unnecessarily overburdening the Ghanaian taxpayer in the formal sector like we have done since 1992. So I appreciate the concern.